Listen to the sound of footsteps in the dark, to voices that may not be quite human, to the sound of screams in the night. The Haunted Cabaret, the home of all things horror, on Rhode with your host, George Garner. The Haunted Cabaret starts now. All right, that was Black Sabbath, Neon Nights, kicking off this week's episode of The Haunted Cabaret here on Rhode Island Free Radio. I'm your host, as always, George Garner. Across from me, Chuckles the Clown, Nurse Misery in the studio, at the controls, Tony Jones. But we're going to start off the show tonight discussing somebody who's, two people actually, who are no longer with us. One of them, I'll mention right off the top, anybody that's a professional wrestling fan knows this already. The American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, has gone to that big Vince McMahon promotion in the sky. Dusty, Could have been worse, though. He lived 69 years old, right, Chuckles?
69 years
69 years old. 2 kids, very successful in the same business that he made a name for himself in.
And he was a hell of a character, and he made a really good name for himself to begin with. So
he did. Active in the wrestling business behind the scenes as well as in the ring. So he will be missed, but his legacy carries on.
That was one of those situations, too, where the American dream wasn't just a gimmick. He literally grew up dirt floor poor and ended up becoming a millionaire. It was that wasn't just a gimmick.
It was a rags to riches. Now, the other person who has left us, unlike Dusty Rhodes, does not leave any heirs. I don't know if he has relatives, but what I mean is Christopher Lee has gone to that grave. Christopher Lee was the last of the old-time horror actors. Peter Cushing, Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi. That's what I mean. Dusty Rhodes has a legacy. Christopher Lee, I don't think, has a legacy. In other words, there's not going to be anybody to replace him. Died at 93. Now, before we went to the live mics, I did mention if I was going to have a career, though, I wouldn't mind having one like Christopher Lee. Died at 93, and he was successful. Bela Lugosi, a lot of the other great horror actors, they had their heyday in their youth. Then they became obscure. They went down on hard times. That never happened to Christopher Lee. He started out his career, not typecast. He played, straight roles in dramas, leading man things, supporting character actors. Then he was discovered. His big breakthrough was Hammer Film Studios in England decided to revive in the 1960s all the classic monsters. The Dracula, Frankenstein, that had been played by Bela Lugosi and Karloff back in the 30s and 40s. They had been dormant for a while, but like all great monsters, they don't stay dead. They don't stay buried. So Hammer Film Studios decided to re-energize that whole genre of the horror film by bringing back the Frankenstein monster, Dracula, the Mummy, and Christopher Lee played them all. Unlike Lugosi, who was famous for Dracula, Karloff was famous for Frankenstein's monster. Christopher Lee played Dracula in The Horror of Dracula, and how many more sequels?
I believe there was 19
total. Sequels total. Yeah. And I'll tell you, and I've seen most of them, and right to the end, the movies never got boring. They never got stale. Christopher Lee, as much as I enjoy watching Bela Lugosi's performances, and a couple of John Carradine played a good Dracula. There were a couple of other actors that did a good job, but Christopher Lee, to me, is Dracula. He combined the gentleman with the evil, like nobody else. He also did a good job playing the Frankenstein monster, and he also did a really good job of the remake of The Mummy. He played the Mummy. Peter Cushing played the scientist that dug him up that was really sorry later that he did. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing I want to mention about Christopher Lee is that he didn't mind sharing the spotlight. All actors have an ego, but for a long time in his career, during the Hammer horror years, Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing were kind of like the Batman and Robin of horror. One would play the monster, one would play the scientist, one would play the bad guy, one would play the good guy. And Christopher Lee, when I say a career that I wouldn't mind emulating, right to the end, he was notable. His last major role was Saruman the Wizard in The Lord of the Rings. And, there's worse ways to go out than performing in a movie, a great part like that, and your movie wins an Academy Award. There's worse ways to go out. So,
not only was he his biggest last role was in Lord of the Rings, but he was actually one of the actors that had conversation with the original author of the Lord of the Rings books. That's something alone. He one of the reasons he abolished that wizard character is he said he knew what that author was going for because he had conversations.
Christopher Lee had met with J.R. Tolkien.
Yep. One of the very few in that series that actually met the guy before he passed away, and he knew how to pull his character off. He was biting it to pieces. When they put that up there, he went right for that. That was like, that's mine.
He lobbied for that role.
He's like, I have this. Did an incredible job, too.
But not only was he such an amazing actor, he was also a serviceman. He was in the military from 1939 up until 1943. So he served, 43, I believe, on this one.
Well, during World War II.
Yeah.
Sorry, 46.
Oh.
So he served for 7 years.
All right, so from 39
to 46.
All right, so he served all the way through World War II.
Yep.
As what? Does it say there?
He actually retired as,
I mean, the Army, Air Force, Navy. Obviously, it was English.
he retired with the rank of flight lieutenant.
Flight
He
lieutenant.
retired
So-
from the RAF.
Royal Air Force.
Yes. So it would have started off in the Army and then turned into the Air Force. Because
Well, we're talking English here.
now, did the English have a Air Force?
Oh,
when it
yes.
started off? All right,
Yes,
'cause
Royal
we
Air,
didn't have
Royal
one
Air
in-
Force.
Yeah.
We didn't have one
He
until the 40s.
volunteered, too. He wasn't drafted. He volunteered straight to be into the Royal Air Force.
So that meant he had brains if he's in the Air Force there, being a lieutenant. So
Yeah, and character. I mean, I don't know. Something tells me that if a war started right now, most of our actors, actresses, and other entertainment personalities would find someplace else to be other than in the armed services.
Yeah.
Oh, they trash it now. They trash their soldiers. That's the biggest thing for the modern day actors to make the soldiers look like crap. There's a lot of them out there that's a new thing of them to boycott what they're out there doing.
Okay, let's not get too far afield on that because then that could always start a rant on my part. And, in the middle of a tribute, rants are not usually good.
Exactly.
Okay. For the moment, though, let's go to the music. Let's go back to the Blue Oyster Cult. How about a veteran of the Psychic Wars here on Rhode Island Free Radio's Haunted Cabaret?
You see me now, veteran of 1,000 psychic wars. I've been living on the edge so long, where the winds of limbo roar. And I'm young enough to look at, and far too old to see. All the scars are on the inside. I'm not sure that there's anything left to me.